Hello again, folks. This time we're going to be talking a little bit about Karen Seccombe's Chapter 4 in the So You Think I Drive a Cadillac book. And in this chapter, Why Welfare, she considers the different reasons that welfare recipients will attribute to their being on public assistance. The interesting thing about this is that she finds that the women who are recipients tend to very actively disassociate themselves from other welfare recipients. They see a wide variety or wide difference in reasons why they're receiving public assistance as opposed to other women. And as far as the other women are concerned, the tendency tends to be to attribute personal blame as the reasons for being on public assistance, whereas for themselves, they cite circumstances that are really beyond their control in their own situations. And generally, these reasons for being on welfare that are beyond their control fall into two different categories, and they're structural problems and fate. Now, Seccombe says really that even the kinds of things that the recipients refer to as personal blame or think of as personal blame involving other people, they're still really talking about structural problems. But later in the chapter she goes into a little bit of an explanation of the dynamics behind why this probably occurs. But as for the reasons why welfare recipients see themselves as needing to be on public assistance, social structure is one of the two categories. And social structure, there actually are, I think, 7 different reasons under social structure that they describe as a cause. And as you read this chapter, you're going to see that Seccombe has statistics from different studies over the course of the last few decades that do a lot to reinforce these notions. First of all, the first part of social structure that is of concern is employment. The high unemployment rate nationally at the present time, and it has been for quite some time. And among minority women, there is even a higher rate of unemployment, and the pay that they do receive is a pay that's insufficient to live on. It just doesn't create a living wage, and certainly not one where you can raise children with. Another part of the social structure that contributes to individuals being on public assistance is the risk of losing health insurance. And in fact, Seccombe points out that for many of the recipients, the health insurance piece, Medicaid, was more important than receiving the check itself. The uninsured, when they leave, if an individual leaves public assistance and they lose Medicaid, they're probably moving into jobs that won't offer health benefits, and at least not initially, and maybe not for the children. And so mothers realize that as an uninsured individual that there are delays in receiving health care. Individuals oftentimes don't seek out health care, don't fill prescriptions and those kinds of things because they really can't afford it. And so mothers kind of look to this and realize that they would be losing not only health care for themselves but also for their children. And so there is one more reason why it's important to stay on public assistance. Childcare is another reason. The big dilemma, should a woman stay home to care for her children, or should she work? If she goes out to work, public assistance recipients often find that the daycare centers may be expensive, but of greater concern really is that they may be of poor quality, and they're very reluctant to leave their children with strangers. As far as school-age children goes, there is also a lack of after-school programs available on a consistent basis as well. Now, part of the problem that welfare recipients run into as far as childcare goes is that their work schedules are often very irregular. Being in these sort of low-end kinds of jobs and being new to these jobs, they're often given the unfavorable shifts, and so they may get off after the daycare center closes, and finding 24-hour daycare centers can be difficult oftentimes. And so there's a number of different reasons, again, why childcare also presents a barrier to getting off of public assistance. Fathers' involvement is another reason why individuals are on public assistance. Many of the fathers of the children are uninvolved. What child support is provided is pretty spotty and often inadequate or even non-existent. And there just really isn't a good enforcement of existing child support laws by our system. transportation is a big block for an individual trying to support herself with children. The cost of the automobile alone is very prohibitive, and if they do have an automobile, if they do have an automobile, the automobile may be in poor repair, gas guzzler, those kinds of things, and so it's quite expensive to run. If the individual tries to not have an automobile and rely upon mass transit, again, there are limitations about the mass transit schedules. In the smaller cities, at least, buses stop running after a certain hour, and oftentimes individuals have employment that goes past the time the buses run, and so they have to find other ways to get home and to get their children on the way, perhaps. If they are taking buses, there's often long waits at transfer stations and those types of things, and so those that resort to walking or riding bikes and those kinds of things find themselves confronted with other kinds of problems in modern communities, with traffic being the way it is, and with having to go through crime areas and those kinds of things. And so transportation is another reason why individuals find public assistance is necessary. Racism and sexism. The job opportunities, we know, are more limited for women than for men. Women tend to earn less than men and are more likely to earn minimum wage, or even less than that than a man is. And finally, this notion that the welfare system breeds dependence, I should say. When coming off welfare, the loss of health insurance, the loss of support for child care, it can be pretty devastating. One individual that Seccombe interviews in the book talks about how all of the money that she earned went to her babysitter, and so it didn't pay her to work, and she had to quit working in order to, spend time with her child. Another thing that happens sometimes when individuals come off public assistance is that subsidized housing becomes more expensive as their income rises, and so again, what they earn, what they earn more by going to work, they may lose in terms of social service programs ending or subsidies being undercut. And so oftentimes when an individual leaves public assistance and moves to the working world, their standard of living often lowers. And Seccombe says that the way the system is set up, it may make more sense to stay on it than to jump into the insecurity of low-tier work. The other reason that the other group of reasons, rather, for individuals staying on welfare is the fatalism is the cause, basically. The sense that bad luck is the reason that they're on public assistance. Unintended pregnancies, and oftentimes with teenagers, they're very unprepared. They're not very knowledgeable about pregnancy and how it occurs, oftentimes. Even in today's modern world, that's true. And among minorities in particular, white individuals, white teenagers might consider abortions more, but minority individuals generally do not consider abortions. And so anyway, there's a number of reasons that are listed there that that contribute to a person being on public assistance. Poor health. Poor women have poorer health than others, and it's noted that a quarter of the children that are receiving temporary assistance for needy families funds in this one study had a chronic illness, and so mothers a lot of times had to stay home to take care of their ill child, and they don't want to leave their sick children in the care of other people. And then finally, the other situation that tends to be beyond their control, the other two situations involve relationships. The end of the relationships kind of abruptly occurring, and the woman losing the income that she had at that time, and the other possibility of violence in the relationship, where the individual is fleeing an abusive relationship. A statistic that Seccombe mentions in her book says that every year 1 in 6 couples have at least one violent act in their relationship. And consider also that poor health, unintended pregnancies, violence in relationships, all these kinds of things tend to increase in frequency in the lower socioeconomic classes. And so individuals that are on public assistance are going to experience more of these contributors. But the thing to stop and consider is the fact that when you see these women blaming or looking at other women on welfare and seeing, saying that they're to fault for their own situation, really, what they're doing is kind of playing out what society says about public assistance recipients. And this kind of demonstrates that the women on welfare perceive the economic hierarchy in the United States as essentially fair, and that where you are in that hierarchy economically is a result of the effort and motivation that you put into it. They believe that, um, but and so this idea then, this popular belief of the welfare mother, the lazy woman receiving benefits, they kind of buy into that, but evaluate. Each of them evaluate her own situation as being very different. But common sense, these beliefs about welfare recipients are based on this, what's referred to in the Seccombe book as a common sense view of reality, that is often value laden and advantageous, but only to the powerful. And they are made to seem very natural and normal. And so the less powerful in society, including the poor, internalize these views of truth and do not see that these views serve the powerful at their own expense. Poverty and welfare use become seen as personal problems rather than as social problems. So some questions for you to consider is, first of all, which explanations of poverty, social structure, or the fatalistic, the list of, I think there were 11 some reasons for that there, do you find to be the most valid? Do you accept any of those? If not, even though Karen Seccombe is interviewing individuals and saying these are the reasons, what are the reasons why you have difficulty accepting those explanations? What kinds of structural changes do you think are needed in our society so that women can get along without welfare? And what type of social policies should be enacted or amended to make some of these structural changes? So these are just some things for you to consider in reading this book, particularly for those of you in human services, social work careers, how you might be able to contribute in your careers towards changing some of these conditions that lead these women into living a life of public assistance and dependency. That is. That's that. Karen Seccombe's chapters, tend to be pretty concise and focused, and so that's one thing to be said for her book is, is a very narrow kind of focus with each chapter, and so something to consider again as we look at the lives of public assistance recipients in the modern era. Okay, thanks very much, and have a good week.